Margaret Chen's arthritic fingers couldn't hold a pen steady anymore, but they could still remember the exact weight of her son's hand when he was small. Now those same trembling fingers were signing away everything David had left behind, and she didn't even know it. The black ink on the power of attorney documents was still fresh when Nicole Hayes Chen walked out of their Pasadena Craftsman with their checkbook, their mail key, and legal control over every decision Margaret and Vincent would make for the rest of their lives. 6 months of grief had left the elderly couple hollow, barely surviving in separate silences, their home slowly collapsing around them, like their marriage, like their will to keep going. Nicole had appeared with casseroles and concerned efficiency, promising to handle the little things while they mourned. What she was really handling was $127,000 in withdrawals, a secretly refinanced house, and a closing date neither of them knew existed. Then a tattooed 19-year-old with a military duffel bag and their dead son's dog tags knocked on their door at sunset. Marcus Rivera claimed David had given him their address in case anything happened. Nicole had never mentioned him. Vincent let him stay anyway, 1 week, garage only, recognizing something in the kid's desperate independence that reminded him of David at that age. Marcus noticed what grief had made invisible to them. The final notices mixed with junk mail, the lockbox hidden in the hedges, the medications never delivered. He started documenting everything, and Nicole started fighting back. Have you ever watched someone you love sign away their autonomy while you stood by, helpless to stop it? Stay with us to discover how an unlikely family, forged from loss, bound by evidence, and determined to reclaim what was stolen, turned receipts of exploitation into proof of something stronger. That family is what you build when everything else is taken away. Margaret Chen woke to an empty bed at 5:47 a.m. Vincent's side already cold. 6 months since the funeral, and her husband had become a ghost in their own house. Up before dawn, gone to the garage before she could pretend they might speak. She pressed arthritic knuckles against her sternum, feeling the familiar ache that had nothing to do with inflammation. The pain medication sat unprescribed in some pharmacy computer system, discontinued when writing checks became too difficult, when Nicole had promised to handle everything. Margaret flexed her fingers experimentally. They trembled like autumn leaves. David's room called to her with gravitational pull. 17 times she'd reorganized it since the funeral, folding and refolding his high school varsity jacket, arranging his childhood books by color, then size, then publication date. The Purple Heart sat on his dresser in its velvet case. She'd touched it once and hadn't slept for 3 days. The kitchen smelled of nothing. Vincent's coffee mug sat, abandoned on the garage step, ringed with yesterday's stains. Margaret ate standing up, cold toast, no butter, her jaw working mechanically. The mailbox, visible through the window, bulged with envelopes. Neither of them had checked it in weeks, maybe longer. Time had become elastic, unmeasurable. She found Vincent exactly where she knew she would. Concrete floor, disassembled lawnmower spread before him like surgical components. He'd been fixing it for 2 months. The mower had worked fine. "Coffee's cold," she said. Vincent adjusted his hearing aids with thick fingers, the gesture automatic and meaningless. The batteries had died weeks ago. He nodded anyway, pretending comprehension, and Margaret didn't have the energy to repeat herself. They'd perfected this pantomime of marriage, going through motions emptied of meaning. The afternoon stretched endless. Margaret dusted surfaces already clean. Vincent sanded wood that needed no sanding. The phone rang twice. Nicole's number on the caller ID. Margaret watched it buzz against the counter, imagining her daughter-in-law's patient concern, her gentle efficiency. She couldn't face it. Couldn't face the way Nicole looked at her. like she was already half gone. Dinner arrived without comment. Microwaved leftovers eaten in separate rooms, the television filling their living room with canned laughter. Margaret barely tasted the food. Vincent probably couldn't hear the TV but watched anyway, his profile backlit and unfamiliar. When had he become old? When had she? Night came as relief. They prepared for bed in synchronized silence. Separate bathrooms, separate routines, meeting finally in their queen-sized canyon. Margaret lay on her right edge. Vincent claimed his left. The space between them felt measureless, impossible to cross. "Vincent?" she whispered into darkness. His hearing aid sat on the nightstand, useless plastic. He didn't respond. Margaret closed her eyes against tears that wouldn't come anymore. David's absence lived between them like a third body, pushing them toward opposite horizons. She thought about Nicole's phone calls, her concerned offers, the manila folders she'd mentioned containing important paperwork. Tomorrow, maybe, she'd have the strength to answer, but probably not. Vincent's breathing settled into sleep's irregular rhythm. Margaret listened to her husband, stranger, companion, fellow survivor, and wondered how two people could drown side by side, close enough to touch, yet impossibly, irretrievably alone. Outside, the mailbox overflowed with envelopes they'd never open. Nicole Hayes Chen arrived at 9:13 a.m. with a lasagna and salvation. Margaret heard the doorbell through David's room, where she'd been refolding his Marine Corps t-shirts for the 18th time. She descended the stairs slowly, arthritis making each step a negotiation, and found her daughter-in-law framed in morning light. Black turtleneck, pearl earrings, David's wedding ring on a delicate chain. "I've been calling," Nicole said, embracing her with practiced gentleness. "I know. I'm sorry." "Don't apologize." Nicole followed her inside, cataloging with sympathetic efficiency. Unpaid bills scattered across the kitchen counter, expired milk in the refrigerator, Margaret's unchanged clothes from yesterday. "Oh, Margaret, you're barely surviving." The observation landed with uncomfortable accuracy. Vincent emerged from the garage, grease-stained and confused. Nicole kissed his cheek, speaking slowly and clearly, though he couldn't hear her over the kitchen fan's rattle. "I'm worried about you both," Nicole announced, setting the lasagna on the counter beside a stack of manila folders. "And I think it's time we made some practical changes." She worked through the house with gentle authority, throwing out expired food, sorting mail into piles, noting the broken porch light and overflowing gutters. Margaret trailed behind her, simultaneously grateful and diminished. "I should be handling this," Margaret said. "You're grieving. Let someone help." Nicole returned to the kitchen table, opening the folders. "I've prepared some paperwork. Power of attorney documents. They'll let me manage the little things while you focus on healing." The pages were already filled out, requiring only signatures. Margaret's hands shook trying to hold the pen. Her knuckles ached, fingers refusing to grip properly. Nicole guided them with infinite patience, her warmth genuine and suffocating. "This protects you," Nicole explained. "I'll handle bills, medical appointments, keep the house David grew up in safe. You won't have to worry about anything." Vincent couldn't hear the explanation over the kitchen fan, but signed where Nicole indicated, trusting. Margaret watched her husband's thick fingers form his name, each letter a surrender neither of them understood yet. Nicole photographed the documents immediately with her phone. Professional, efficient. "I'll need your checkbook," she said, "and the mail key. Online banking passwords too, just until you're feeling stronger." Margaret retrieved them mechanically. Nicole's relief felt genuine, her embrace warm. "You're doing the right thing," Nicole assured her. "David would want his parents taken care of properly." After she left, the house felt emptier despite the lasagna warming the kitchen. Margaret found Nicole's business card tucked beside the Tupperware. West Side Realty, Premium Estate Sales. Her arthritis flared, hands cramping. She wanted to call Nicole back, ask about the card, but her phone was somewhere upstairs, and the stairs felt insurmountable. Vincent returned to the garage. Margaret stood alone in their kitchen, surrounded by sordid mail and good intentions, feeling like she'd signed something more permanent than papers. Outside, a car drove past slowly. Through the window, Margaret glimpsed a realtor's lockbox hanging from their mailbox post. Gleaming silver in afternoon light, she blinked when at Domot. She looked again. It was gone. Probably imagination. Grief playing tricks. Margaret carried the lasagna to the refrigerator and tried to remember when she'd last felt this afraid. Marcus Rivera arrived at sunset with everything he owned and nowhere else to go. He'd rehearsed his introduction 17 times on the bus from downtown. Practiced explaining David, the mentorship program, the address scrawled on notebook paper 3 years ago with the promise, "If anything happens to me, the Chens will help." The words felt presumptuous now, standing on their sagging porch with his military surplus duffel and dying phone battery. The woman who answered wore yesterday's cardigan and defeat. Margaret Chen studied him with a teacher's assessment. Too thin, too young, too desperate. And Marcus watched her decision form before he spoke. "Mrs. Chen, I'm Marcus Rivera. David gave me your address." Her face went carefully blank. "David's gone." "I know, I'm sorry, He shifted the duffel. "He sponsored my adoption from foster care through the Veterans Program. Said if anything happened..." The rehearsed words crumbled. "I have nowhere else." An older man appeared behind her, Chinese features weathered by time, adjusting hearing aids with thick fingers. Vincent Chen squinted at Marcus, catching fragments. Marcus pulled out his evidence. Letters in David's handwriting, photos from Angels games, discharge papers listing David Chen as emergency contact. Margaret examined each with shaking hands, her arthritis making the pages tremble. "Nicole never mentioned you," she said. "Who's Nicole?" The question hung between them. Answer enough. Marcus kept his voice steady. "I just need a few nights. Your couch. I'll be gone by week's end." "Absolutely not." Margaret's refusal was immediate, protective. "We can't handle this right now." But Vincent had seen the dog tags around Marcus's neck. David's unit number stamped in metal. He pushed past Margaret, turned Marcus toward the light, studied his hands the way mechanics study tools. "Garage," Vincent announced. "1 week." "Vincent, we don't know him." "David knew him." Vincent's voice carried military finality. 1 week. Margaret's protest died unspoken. Marcus watched something pass between the elderly couple. Communication in silence, resignation in her posture. She stepped aside. The garage smelled of sawdust and motor oil. Vincent gestured to an old couch hemorrhaging stuffing, then retreated without explanation. Marcus dropped his duffel, alone suddenly with the magnitude of his intrusion. That first night, Margaret lay rigid in bed, listening to unfamiliar sounds. Shower running at midnight, soft guitar chords, Spanish folk songs she almost recognized, and the garage couch creaking under restless weight. Each noise felt like violation, like her grief sanctuary being invaded by chaos she hadn't invited. "Vincent?" she whispered. No response. His hearing aid sat on the nightstand, deliberate deafness. She thought about the dog tags Marcus wore, how Vincent had recognized them immediately while she'd been ready to turn him away. Thought about Nicole's concerned efficiency, her manila folders, her promises to handle everything. Nicole had never mentioned David's foster son, never mentioned Marcus existed. The guitar stopped. Silence pressed heavy. Margaret closed her eyes, wondering what other things Nicole hadn't mentioned. Wondering why a stranger wearing her dead son's dog tags felt simultaneously like threat and answer. In the garage, Marcus lay awake cataloging details. The overflowing mailbox, Margaret's arthritic tremor, Vincent's broken hearing aids. The house felt wrong, not with malice, but with absence. Like something had been carefully removed, leaving only grief and confusion behind. He touched the dog tags against his chest, David's voice in memory. If anything happens, go to my parents. Promise me. Marcus had promised. Now he was here, uninvited and unwelcome, sleeping in a garage that smelled like his mentor's childhood. 1 week, Vincent had said. Marcus would make it enough. By morning 2, Margaret had compiled a list of Marcus Rivera's offenses. Quesadillas at 2 a.m. that triggered the smoke alarm. Wet towels colonizing Vincent's woodworking bench. Guitar at dawn, Johnny Cash bleeding into Spanish corridos she couldn't name. Dirty dishes in the sink. The bathroom left humid and disordered. Youth colonizing their careful, grief-preserved silence. You can't make food at midnight, she told him, voice sharp with exhausted authority. Sorry, Mrs. Chen. Marcus looked genuinely apologetic, then did it again the next night. But he also watched, hyper-vigilant in ways Margaret couldn't see, cataloging details with foster care-honed survival instinct. Day 2, Marcus noticed the mail explosion. Dozens of envelopes marked final notice, urgent collections, mixed with grocery circulars and coupon mailers like camouflage. He sorted them by severity while Margaret made coffee. Mrs. Chen? These bills, Nicole's handling them, right? Margaret's hands trembled around her mug. She said she would. When did you last see a statement? Margaret couldn't remember. Time had become liquid since David's funeral. Dates meaningless. Day 3. Marcus walked to CVS for shampoo, ran into their pharmacist by accident. The woman recognized him from his visits with Margaret. Tell Mrs. Chen her arthritis medication is ready, she said. Been ready 2 months now. Nicole was picking those up. The pharmacist's expression shifted. Nicole picked up prescriptions 12 times. Mrs. Chen hasn't gotten refills since September. Marcus checked the medicine cabinet when he returned. Empty except for expired aspirin and Vincent's heart medication, which Nicole had also claimed to manage. Your meds aren't here, he told Margaret. She stared at the empty shelves like they'd betrayed her. But Nicole said, what else did Nicole say? Margaret couldn't answer. The exhaustion was too complete. Day 4. Marcus discovered the lockbox while trimming hedges Vincent had let grow wild. Real estate lockbox, partially hidden behind overgrown hydrangeas, combination tumbler catching afternoon light. He photographed it without mentioning it to anyone, evidence of something he couldn't yet name. That evening, he organized Vincent's medications by color and time in a daily pill caddy. White morning pills, blue afternoon, yellow evening. Simple system Nicole had deemed too complicated. Vincent watched Marcus's steady hands arrange the pills with mechanical precision. Air Force? Foster care. Had to track my own meds by 12. Vincent nodded understanding. Different training, same discipline. Margaret observed from the kitchen doorway, this tattooed stranger showing more patience with Vincent's hearing loss than anyone had in months. Marcus repeated instructions 3 times without frustration, spoke directly to Vincent's face, waited for comprehension before moving forward. Nicole always spoke over Vincent, always explained his confusion to others as if he weren't present. "Thank you," Margaret said quietly. Marcus looked up, surprised. "It's just pills, Mrs. Chen." "It's not." But she couldn't articulate why. How small competencies felt like dignity restored. How this chaos bringer somehow made Vincent visible again. That night, Marcus stayed up late photographing documents. The lockbox serial number, overdue bills, the pharmacy's notation about Nicole's pickups. He was building something, though he couldn't yet see its shape. Evidence. David had taught him that. Document everything. Protect the vulnerable. Marcus uploaded photos to cloud storage. David's lessons made practice. 1 week, Vincent had given him. He'd need more. Nicole arrived without warning on Marcus's 5th morning, her key turning in the lock with proprietary confidence. She froze seeing him at the kitchen table, coffee mug halfway to his lips. "Who are you?" Her voice carried surgical precision, concern wrapped around interrogation. Marcus set down the mug carefully. "Marcus Rivera. David's. I know every person David cared about." Nicole's smile never reached her eyes. "He never mentioned you." Margaret emerged from the hallway, drawn by voices. "Nicole, we weren't expecting." "Clearly." Nicole's gaze swept the kitchen. Marcus's guitar case against the wall, his jacket on the back of a chair, the organized pill caddy on the counter. "Margaret, can we talk privately?" In David's room, Marcus's temporary archive, Nicole closed the door with deliberate gentleness. She pulled documents from her designer purse, the power of attorney Margaret barely remembered signing. "I'm legally responsible for your well-being now," Nicole said. "And I'm concerned. This stranger moves in, and suddenly you're questioning my help?" "He's not a stranger. David mentored troubled kids. It's not the same as family." Nicole produced more papers. "I need your signature on refinancing documents, estate tax protection, standard procedure." The words blurred together. Margaret's hands shook. Arthritis, exhaustion, confusion forming a trilogy of incompetence. Nicole guided her fingers across signature lines with practiced patience, the same warmth she'd shown before. Except now Marcus was downstairs, and nothing felt simple anymore. Vincent signed without hearing the explanation, trusting Nicole's concerned expression over the kitchen fan's noise. After Nicole left, checkbook replenished, new documents photographed, Marcus made his decision. He couldn't prove anything yet, but David had taught him documentation was protection, evidence was armor. Marcus spent the afternoon photographing everything. The POA signed at David's memorial service when Margaret was sedated and Vincent was sobbing. Nicole's business cards for 3 different realty companies. Bank statements stuffed in kitchen drawers like shameful secrets. In David's room, Marcus found the proof hidden in plain sight. Margaret's obsessive reorganizing had hollowed out photo albums, leaving them as unintentional filing cabinets. Between pages of David's childhood, withdrawal slips, account statements, legal notices. Margaret never saw because Nicole handled the mail. $8,500 withdrawn October 15th, $12,000 withdrawn October 22nd, $15,400 withdrawn November 3rd. The amounts varied, but the pattern held. Systematic extraction disguised as caretaking. Marcus worked through the night, uploading 247 photographs to cloud storage. Each image was evidence of something terrible. A daughter-in-law exploiting grief, transforming trust into theft, weaponizing family bonds for financial gain. At 4 a.m., Margaret found him in David's room, surrounded by documents and laptop glow. "You should sleep," she said. "Mrs. Chen." When did you last see your bank statements? The question landed like accusation. Margaret's face crumpled. Nicole handles that now. I signed papers. She's taking care of everything. But her voice carried doubt, finally, after months of accepting concern as care. Marcus showed her the withdrawal slips, the amounts, the dates, showed her Nicole's multiple realty cards, the refinancing documents signed that morning, showed her the lockbox photograph from the hedges. She's selling your house, Marcus said quietly, and I don't think you'll see the money. Margaret sat on David's childhood bed, surrounded by evidence of systematic betrayal. Her son's widow, the woman she'd trusted with everything after David died, had been stealing from them for 6 months. What do we do? Margaret whispered. Marcus looked at her. This grieving mother who'd lost her son and was losing her home, and channeled every lesson David had taught him about protecting the vulnerable. We document everything, he said, and we fight back. Marcus stopped making quesadillas at 2 a.m., started making coffee at 7 instead. The shift was deliberate, calculated. He'd tested their boundaries with chaos, watching how they responded to his mess, his noise, his intrusion into their grief sanctuary. Now he understood. Margaret and Vincent didn't need disruption. They needed structure, purpose, proof that life could have rhythm again. Morning routine emerged like scaffolding around their collapse. Coffee at 7, breakfast together at 7:30. Margaret's arthritis stretches at 8. Marcus had YouTubed physical therapy exercises, guided her through them with patient repetition. Small movements, manageable pain. You don't have to do this, Margaret said on day 3 of the new regime. I know. Marcus poured her second coffee without asking. But David would want me to. The invocation of their son's name still hurt, but it also anchored them to something beyond grief. Vincent taught Marcus woodworking in the garage, ostensibly. Really, Marcus was extracting information through the language of craft. How to join corners. When they'd bought the house. The satisfaction of mortgage burning parties. Paid it off 10 years ago, Vincent said. Planing oak with steady strokes. Had $180,000 saved for retirement. Margaret wanted to travel. Marcus said nothing. Just photographed another bank statement later, adding it to his growing archive. He scheduled Margaret's arthritis appointment, driving their dust-covered Camry with Vincent in the passenger seat. The receptionist's confusion was immediate. Mrs. Chen? Your daughter-in-law canceled all future appointments 3 months ago. Margaret's face went pale. Nicole said she'd handle it. The doctor was alarmed when he examined Margaret's swollen joints. You've been without medication for months. This didn't have to worsen like this. Marcus paid the $30 copay from his last paycheck. Money he'd been saving for food, for survival. It didn't matter. David had taught him priorities. The pharmacy had records. Nicole picked up medications 12 times, billed to the Chen's account, but never delivered them. Pocket money disguised as caregiving. Over 10 days, the house transformed. Marcus painted the fence, fixed the porch light with YouTube instructions and Vincent's tools. Made Vincent laugh with terrible jokes about his woodworking skills. Created normalcy from wreckage. Margaret taught him to make dumplings on day 8. Her arthritic hands guiding his steady ones, showing him the precise fold, the amount of filling. Meditative work. Generational transfer. David loved these, she said quietly. I know. He made them for me once. Got the folds all wrong. Marcus smiled at the memory. Tasted perfect anyway. Margaret's eyes filled. The first time Marcus had seen her cry since he'd arrived. They didn't discuss Nicole explicitly. didn't talk about David's death or the future or what Marcus's presence meant. They just existed together, day by day, building something fragile and necessary. But in David's old room, now Marcus's command center, the case file grew. Withdrawal slips, account statements, Nicole's multiple business cards, the lockbox photo, pharmacy records, bank statements showing systematic depletion. 247 photographs became 398, then 503. Evidence of exploitation so clear, it screamed. On day 10, Marcus made dinner: spaghetti with jarred sauce, garlic bread from the freezer, salad from a bag. They ate together at the kitchen table, 3 people instead of 2 isolated souls. "Marcus," Vincent said, struggling to hear over the refrigerator hum. "You can stay, permanently, if you want." Marcus looked at Margaret, expecting protest. Instead, she nodded. "We'd like you to stay," she said. David chose well. Marcus touched the dog tags around his neck. David's faith made metal. The family his mentor had promised finally offered freely. "I'd like that too," he said. Then added silently, "And I'm going to protect you, like David protected me." The case file waited upstairs. Tomorrow, they'd go to the bank. Patricia Kim had known the Chens for 30 years, since Vincent fixed her father's Buick for free, since Margaret tutored her nephew through 2nd grade. She'd watched their accounts with growing concern for months, bound by regulations, but worried nonetheless. When Marcus walked them into her branch, she felt relief mixed with dread. "Just a routine check," Marcus explained, "since Nicole's handling everything." Patricia pulled up their accounts in her private office, the screen casting blue light across her careful expression. She printed statements without speaking, her printer whirring evidence into existence. In 6 months, $127,000 withdrawn in increments designed to avoid automatic flags. $8,500 here, $12,000 there, $15,400. Each amount just under reporting thresholds, each documented as care expenses or household maintenance. Their savings account, once $180,000, the pride of decades of careful living, now held $11,400. Their checking account showed negative $347. But the devastating revelation was the home equity line of credit. $200,000 taken out 2 months ago using the power of attorney. Funds transferred directly to an account in Nicole's name. "There's more," Patricia said quietly. She pulled up closing documents. "Your house is scheduled for sale next Friday, 12 days from now." Margaret made a sound. Not quite a cry, not quite a gasp. The noise of something breaking. Nicole had listed it for $850,000, far below market value for quick sale. After the HELOC payoff, the Chens would net approximately $400,000. Except Nicole had structured the sale designating herself as beneficiary of estate proceeds in David's memory. They would lose everything. Vincent went pale, gripping the desk edge with mechanic's hands that suddenly seemed fragile. Margaret cried for the first time since David's funeral. Real tears. Not the dry grief that had sustained her for months. Marcus felt rage crystallize into purpose. "Patricia, I need you to print everything. Flag these accounts. Document this meeting officially." Patricia was already moving. "I'll file suspicious activity reports. This is textbook financial exploitation. Can you stop the sale?" "Not without a court order, but I can make it very difficult to close." She printed page after page, evidence accumulating. The power of attorney gives Nicole legal authority, but it doesn't exempt her from fiduciary responsibility. She's required to act in your best interests. "She's stealing from us," Margaret whispered. "Yes," Patricia said simply, "and now we have proof." They drove home in silence, Marcus at the wheel, the printed statements in a manila folder on Vincent's lap, like a diagnosis of something terminal. At home, Vincent retreated to the garage. Margaret sat at the kitchen table, staring at nothing. Marcus made tea nobody drank. At 10 p.m., Vincent emerged from the garage. He stood in the kitchen doorway, hearing aids turned up, determination replacing shock on his weathered face. "Marcus," he said, "you asked to stay permanently. We said yes. But now I'm asking you something. Anything. Help us fight back." Margaret looked up, meeting Marcus's eyes. She nodded. "I already am," Marcus said, thinking of the 503 photographs upstairs, the documentation David had taught him to maintain. "But now we do it together." That night, they sat at the kitchen table. 3 people bound by David's memory and Nicole's betrayal, planning resistance. The house might be sold in 12 days, but they weren't going quietly. Patricia Kim called Nicole Hayes Chen the morning after the bank visit. Regulation required notifying the power of attorney holder when accounts were flagged for suspicious activity. Nicole arrived at the Chen's house by noon, attorney in tow. Richard Chen, no relation, as his business card clarified, carried a leather briefcase and wore concern-like cologne. Nicole had upgraded from casseroles to legal representation. "Margaret, Vincent." Nicole's voice held manufactured patience. "Patricia called me. She's worried you're being confused by outside influences." Marcus stood in the kitchen doorway, watching the performance. "This is about protecting you," Nicole continued. "I've been managing your finances because you asked me to. Because grief made everything too overwhelming. You stole from us." Margaret's voice was small but present. Richard stepped forward with professional sympathy. "Mrs. Chen, your daughter-in-law has legal power of attorney. Every withdrawal was documented. Every decision made in your best interest." He produced his own documents. The POA Margaret barely remembered signing, transaction records that made systematic theft look like caregiving. "Margaret struggles to sign her name due to arthritis," Richard explained to Vincent, who couldn't hear over the refrigerator hum, but nodded anyway. Vincent's hearing loss causes significant confusion. The house fell into disrepair. These are signs you need more support, not less. Nicole's expression shifted. Wounded caretaker, burdened by duty. "I've been trying to protect the house David grew up in. Move you somewhere with proper care before something happens." "We don't want to move." Margaret's arthritis made her grip the counter, knuckles white. "That's grief talking." Nicole's dismissal was gentle, devastating. She turned her attention to Marcus like a spotlight finding its target. "Tell me about your legal status here." Marcus met her gaze. "I'm staying with the Chens. Employment history? Between jobs? Housing history before this? Foster care, aged out." Richard took notes with expensive pen on legal pad, building narrative. "So, you're an unemployed former foster youth with no legal relationship to the Chens, currently sleeping on their couch during their most vulnerable time." The trap closed with bureaucratic precision. "This is textbook exploitation of vulnerable adults," Richard announced. "Nicole will be filing an emergency guardianship petition this afternoon for their protection." Margaret's protest died when Nicole touched her shoulder. Gentle, proprietary. "We'll get you both the care you deserve." They left with threats disguised as concern, legal paperwork in monogrammed briefcase. Over 3 days, Nicole consolidated control with surgical efficiency. New locks appeared for their safety. their phones redirected to her number to reduce stress. Car keys disappeared until Vincent's DMV hearing, a hearing that didn't exist. Marcus documented everything, photographing each change, each restriction. But Nicole was working faster now, threatened and dangerous. On day 3, she arrived with a locksmith, changing the garage lock while Marcus was inside. The message was clear. His time was ending. That night, Marcus lay awake in David's room, surrounded by evidence that might not matter. Nicole had lawyers, expert witnesses, the respectable memory of a war hero's son. Marcus had a juvenile record, no job, and a history that made him look exactly like what Nicole claimed, an opportunistic kid exploiting grief-stricken elders. His phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Restraining order filed. You have 48 hours before service. Marcus screenshot the warning, added it to his cloud archive, and began preparing for separation. He had 2 days to teach Margaret and Vincent how to survive without him. 2 days to turn them from victims into resistance. In the garage, Vincent's tools waited. Marcus picked up a hollowed-out woodworking manual, perfect size for hiding a prepaid phone. If Nicole wanted war disguised as care, she'd get documentation disguised as defeat. The sheriff's deputies arrived at 8 a.m. with apologetic efficiency and a temporary restraining order. Marcus must leave immediately. Stay 100 yards from the Chens and their property. No contact pending the guardianship hearing in 2 weeks. Please, Margaret's voice broke on the porch. He's helping us. The younger deputy looked uncomfortable. Ma'am, the court order is clear. We don't have discretion here. Marcus had 30 minutes to pack. He pulled Margaret and Vincent into the garage while deputies waited by their patrol car, speaking quickly, urgently. Everything's uploaded to the cloud. Password is David's birthday plus your house number. Mrs. Gutierrez, 3 doors down, has printed copies. Vincent nodded. Hearing aids turned to maximum. You need to document everything Nicole does. Dates, times, amounts, witnesses. Write it down every night. Marcus pressed the hollowed-out woodworking manual into Vincent's hands. Prepaid phone inside. Call Mrs. Gutierrez if you need me. She'll get messages through. We can't do this without you. Margaret's arthritis made her grip painful, desperate. You can't. You have to. Marcus met her eyes. David left me here to help you. I'm not gone. Just outside the fence. Document everything. The deputy appeared in the garage doorway. Time's up, son. Marcus shouldered his duffel bag, everything he owned again reduced to portable survival, and walked past Margaret crying on the porch, Vincent's face a mask of helpless rage. The patrol car drove him to the property line, exactly 100 yards, and left him there. Nicole arrived an hour later with suitcases and manufactured concern. She moved into David's room, temporarily to provide proper care, and began her performance of devoted caregiving. She cooked healthy meals, administered medications. Margaret's arthritis pills finally reappeared after months of absence, proof Nicole had always controlled them. But she also confiscated their cell phones to reduce stress, disconnected the internet, preventing scammers, kept the car keys for safety. That night, Margaret and Vincent lay in bed, Nicole down the hall in their dead son's room, understanding finally that they were prisoners. Vincent waited until Nicole's light went dark, retrieved the hollowed manual from his workbench, found the prepaid phone wrapped in careful layers. They began documenting in a shared notebook by flashlight. Day 1. Nicole took our phones. Says it's temporary. Day 1, Nicole disconnected internet, says we don't need it. Day 1, contractors came to appraise house. Nicole told them we're moving to care facility. Day 1, Asked about bank accounts, Nicole said, "Don't worry about money anymore." The entries were meticulous, heartbreaking. Two elderly people recording their own captivity in cramped handwriting and shared determination. Mrs. Rosa Gutierrez became their lifeline. Each day, she walked past slowly, and they passed notes through the fence when Nicole was distracted, shopping, showering, making phone calls about estate management. Marcus, staying in a youth shelter downtown, received updates via Rosa's whispered phone calls. He'd found a legal aid attorney, Elena Santos, specializing in elder abuse. She'd reviewed his 503 photographs and agreed to represent the Chens pro bono. "We'll fight this," Elena promised, "but they need to be ready to use their own voices." Marcus relayed the message through Rosa. "The judge needs to hear from you directly. Document everything. Practice what you'll say." 10 days passed like slow torture. Nicole's performance was Oscar-worthy. Devoted daughter-in-law, burdened caretaker, protector of the vulnerable. But every night, Vincent and Margaret documented truth by flashlight, building evidence one careful entry at a time. The day before the hearing, Nicole presented them with final documents. Consent to guardianship in their best interest. Margaret refused to sign. Nicole sighed with theatrical patience. "You're too emotional to see what's good for you. The judge will decide tomorrow." That night, they packed Vincent's old briefcase. Documentation notebook, bank statements, Marcus's cloud account information printed by Rosa. They were going to court, and they were going to fight. Nicole served breakfast at precisely 7:30. Scrambled eggs with fresh chives, whole wheat toast, orange juice in spotless glasses. She'd taken over David's room, her suitcases unpacked in his childhood closet like she'd always belonged there. "Eat while it's hot," she said, her smile warm as afternoon sun through kitchen windows. Margaret forced herself to chew mechanically. The food tasted like surrender. Vincent sat across from her, hearing aids turned up but useless against the careful cage Nicole had constructed. Their phones were gone. Too much stress from spam calls. The internet disconnected, preventing scammers who target seniors. Car keys hidden until we sort out Vincent's license renewal. They were prisoners served breakfast on clean plates. After Nicole left for her errands, real estate meetings, Margaret suspected, Vincent retrieved the hollowed woodworking manual from his garage bench. The prepaid phone Marcus had hidden felt small and fragile in his thick fingers. They'd begun documenting everything, just as Marcus had instructed. Margaret opened their shared notebook, arthritis making her handwriting cramped but determined. She dated the entry carefully. Day 3, under Nicole's care. "She opened our mail again," Margaret whispered, though Nicole was blocks away. "Took 3 envelopes marked urgent before we could see them." Vincent nodded, watching Margaret write. His mechanic's precision had taught him the value of detailed records. Every measurement mattered, every notation critical. "Contractors came yesterday," he added. "Measured the living room. Nicole told them we're moving to appropriate facilities next month." Margaret's hand trembled, smudging ink. Moving. They were losing David's house. The home where he'd learned to walk, grown tall against the kitchen doorframe, left from when he enlisted. Losing everything, while Nicole smiled and cooked nutritious meals. Each afternoon, Mrs. Rosa Gutierrez walked past their fence at exactly 2 o'clock. She moved slowly, as if admiring the neighborhood. But her path was deliberate. When Nicole's car was gone, Margaret would slip notes through the fence slats, pages torn from their documentation notebook, folded small and desperate. Rosa passed them to Marcus through careful chain. Her nephew who worked downtown, who knew someone at the youth shelter where Marcus was staying. Evidence traveling through human connection. building towards something neither Margaret nor Vincent could yet see clearly. 10 days passed like slow drowning. Nicole maintained her performance. Medications delivered on schedule, healthy dinners, concerned phone calls to doctors and facilities. To anyone watching, she was devoted perfection. But at night, after Nicole's bedroom light went dark, Margaret and Vincent continued their resistance by flashlight. Day 7. Nicole withdrew $200, said it was for medical equipment we never received. Day 8. She mentioned selling Vincent's tools, called them dangerous clutter. Day 9. Nicole told the mail carrier we're too confused to handle our own correspondence. The notebook filled with careful documentation, dates, times, amounts, witnesses. Marcus had taught them this. Evidence was protection, records were armor. The day before the guardianship hearing, Nicole presented them with final papers: consent to her guardianship, resignation of their autonomy, surrender disguised as care. Just signatures, she said gently, making everything legal and proper. Margaret's arthritic hand hovered over the page. She thought of Marcus, 19 years old, sleeping in a shelter, fighting for them when he had nothing. Thought of David, who'd trusted this stranger's son with his parents' address, his final gift. She set down the pen. No. Nicole's expression shifted. Just briefly. Just enough. The concerned daughter-in-law flickered, revealing something colder underneath. You're too emotional to understand what's best, Nicole said. The judge will decide tomorrow. That night, Vincent packed his old briefcase, documentation notebook, bank statements, Marcus's cloud account information printed by Rosa. Evidence weighed almost nothing but felt heavy as hope. They were fighting back. The Los Angeles County Superior Court smelled of floor polish and desperation. Margaret sat between Vincent and Marcus in the gallery, her arthritic hands folded tight against the trembling. Judge Patricia Reeves entered at 9 sharp, gray hair severe, reading glasses on a chain, expression revealing nothing. Nicole's attorney, Richard Chen, stood with theatrical confidence. Your Honor, this case concerns 2 vulnerable elderly individuals exploited during their darkest hour. Nicole took the stand first, wearing David's wedding ring on its delicate chain. She dabbed her eyes with practiced timing. Margaret can barely sign her name, Nicole testified, voice breaking appropriately. Vincent's hearing loss makes him confused, disoriented. After David died, they stopped eating, stopped bathing. Bills went unpaid for months. Richard presented photos, their overgrown yard, expired milk, unpaid notices scattered across counters, all from before Marcus arrived, though he didn't mention that timeline. I took power of attorney to protect them, Nicole continued. The house sale, the refinancing, it was all to fund appropriate care facilities where they'd be safe. Margaret wanted to scream, wanted to stand and call Nicole a liar. But Elena Santos, their legal aid attorney, touched her arm gently. Wait, she whispered. Let them finish. Dr. Gerald Moss testified next, a geriatric psychiatrist who'd met them once, briefly. With Nicole present throughout, he spoke with clinical authority about mild cognitive decline and decision-making impairment. These individuals show classic signs of vulnerability to exploitation, he announced. Then Richard turned his attention to Marcus. Mr. Rivera is a transient foster youth with no legal relationship to the Chens. He read Marcus's employment history like an indictment. 3 jobs in 2 years, all minimum wage. Housing history, 14 foster placements, current address a youth shelter. He has a juvenile criminal record for theft. Marcus sat motionless, jaw tight. That shoplifting charge at 15, stealing food because his placement family forgot to feed him, now weaponized as evidence of predatory character. He inserted himself into a vulnerable household during acute grief, Richard concluded. Classic exploitation pattern. Judge Reeves took notes, her expression growing concerned. Margaret felt the case slipping away like water through arthritic fingers. The morning break arrived with crushing inevitability. Elena gathered them in the hallway, her professional composure cracking slightly. "We're losing," she said quietly. "Nicole looks devoted. You look frail. Marcus looks exactly like what they're claiming. A troubled kid taking advantage." Vincent adjusted his hearing aids, catching every terrible word. "The documents aren't enough," Elena continued. "The judge needs to hear from you directly. Not me speaking for you. You. Your voices, your truth." Margaret looked at Vincent. This man she'd married 52 years ago, who'd become a stranger through grief, who'd slowly become her partner again through Marcus's chaotic intervention. "Can you do this?" Elena asked. "Can you testify?" Vincent pulled the documentation notebook from his briefcase. 10 days of careful entries, dates and amounts recorded with mechanical precision. His hand shook, but his voice was steady. "Yes." Margaret thought of Nicole's performance. The tears, the concern, the way she'd made exploitation look like love. Thought of Marcus sitting silent while his past was used as weapon against him. She thought of David, who'd trusted this 19-year-old stranger enough to leave him their address, who'd seen potential where others saw only problems. "Yes," Margaret said. "We'll testify." Elena nodded, relief and determination mixing on her face. "Then we fight back. This afternoon, we tell the truth." They returned to the courtroom. Nicole sat composed at her attorney's table, David's ring catching afternoon light through tall windows. Margaret touched the notebook in Vincent's lap. Evidence gathered by flashlight, resistance documented in careful handwriting. Their turn was coming. Elena Santos called Vincent Chen first. He walked to the witness stand slowly, each step deliberate. Judge Reeves offered him a hearing assistance device. Vincent refused with quiet dignity. "I want everyone to see what it's like," he said. "Being dismissed because you can't hear." Elena began gently. "Mr. Chen, when did you sign the power of attorney?" Vincent's voice carried military steadiness despite his shaking hands. "October 7th. David's memorial service." Margaret was sedated. The doctor gave her something for grief. Nicole brought papers while we were surrounded by mourners. He pulled out the notebook Marcus had taught him to keep, pages filled with dated entries. She said it was routine to handle David's affairs properly. "We signed because we trusted her." He paused, adjusting his hearing aids with thick fingers. October 15th, Nicole withdrew $8,500. October 22nd, $12,000. November 3rd, $15,400. For 5 minutes, Vincent read from their careful documentation. Each withdrawal, each decision made without consultation, each time Nicole dismissed their objections as confusion. His hands trembled holding the pages. His voice never wavered. Richard objected twice. Judge Reeves overruled him both times, leaning forward to listen. Margaret took the stand next, carrying the hollowed-out photo albums where she'd unknowingly preserved evidence of their exploitation. "Nicole handled everything," Margaret testified, her teacher's clarity cutting through courtroom formality. "Our mail, our medications, our bank accounts. She said we were too grief-stricken to manage, made us feel incompetent." She showed the withdrawal slips Nicole had hidden between family photos, refinancing documents they'd never seen, letters from their bank Nicole had intercepted. Elena asked the question that mattered most. "Tell the court about Marcus Rivera." Margaret's voice broke. First, genuine emotion after controlled testimony. "He's the son David chose. He noticed what we were too destroyed to see. He cooked meals and fixed our fence and organized Vincent's medications. He treated us like people, not problems." She looked directly at Judge Reeves. "Nicole treated us like children who couldn't be trusted with our own lives. Marcus treated us like family." Elena presented the cloud account evidence. 247 photographs documenting systematic exploitation. Each image time-stamped and geotagged. Bank statements showing depletion. Forged signatures on refinancing documents. The hidden lockbox. Intercepted mail. Richard objected repeatedly. Hearsay, relevance, improper foundation. Judge Reeves overruled each objection, examining every photograph with increasing attention. "I want to see everything," she said. The afternoon stretched into evening. Elena methodically walked through 6 months of exploitation disguised as care. Canceled medical appointments, pocketed medication costs, withdrawn savings, the secretly refinanced house. Margaret watched Nicole's composed mask crack slightly, just enough to reveal something cold underneath the concerned daughter-in-law performance. Finally, Judge Reeves set down her pen. "I'm ordering a 10-day continuance and immediate forensic audit of all accounts under Miss Hayes Chen's control." She looked at Nicole directly. "You will provide full documentation. The temporary restraining order against Mr. Rivera is lifted pending investigation." Richard started to protest. Judge Reeves silenced him with one raised hand. "These people have voices," she said, "and I intend to hear them completely before making any determination about their capacity." Court adjourned. Margaret felt Vincent's hand find hers. First time they'd voluntarily touched in months. Marcus stood in the gallery, David's dog tags visible at his throat, hope and terror mixing on his young face. They'd fought back. Now they waited to see if truth was enough. The forensic auditor worked with accountant's precision and prosecutor's suspicion. She spent 3 days reconstructing Nicole's financial exploitation, interviewing Patricia Kim at the bank, examining 6 months of transactions, tracing funds through accounts like following breadcrumbs through a dark forest. Her report arrived on day 4, dense with numbers that told a devastating story. $142,000 withdrawn by Nicole Hayes Chen over 6 months. $89,000 traceable to personal expenditures, BMW lease, $847 monthly, Cabo San Lucas vacation, $6,200. Designer purchases at South Coast Plaza, rent for a Century City apartment Nicole had secretly maintained. The $200,000 home equity line of credit went to an account Nicole controlled, ostensibly for care expenses. Not $1 was spent on the Chens. Most damning, the refinancing documents bore forged signatures. The notary, confronted with records, admitted Nicole paid her $500 to backdate the notarization. The house sale would have netted Nicole approximately $180,000 after HELOC payoff. The Chens would have received nothing. On day 3 of the investigation, the temporary restraining order was lifted. Marcus stood on the Pasadena porch at sunset, duffel bag over his shoulder, afraid to knock. Margaret opened the door before he could. She pulled him inside without words, her arthritic grip surprisingly strong. Vincent emerged from the garage, hearing aids turned up, and simply nodded. Welcome home. The house had changed in Marcus's absence. Nicole's carefully curated control was gone, replaced by something organic and lived in. Vincent had been building a loft bed frame in the garage, rough oak planks joined with precise dovetails, exactly like the bed David had slept in as a child. Margaret had been practicing her dumpling recipe, writing down measurements for the first time in 30 years. The kitchen counter held flour-dusted index cards covered in her careful teacher's handwriting. They spent a week in careful domesticity, knowing the final hearing loomed, but choosing to live anyway. Marcus fixed the fence properly this time, not just painting over rot. Vincent taught him to read wood grain, how to know which boards would hold weight. Margaret showed him the precise fold for dumplings. Thumb pressing filling in, fingers crimping pleats with arthritic determination. They didn't discuss Nicole or the upcoming resolution. They just existed together, building something that felt permanent. On day 7, Detective Amanda Ruiz arrived from the LAPD Elder Abuse Unit. She was younger than Marcus expected, early 30s, patient voice, notebook already half filled with evidence. "Criminal charges are being filed," she told them over coffee at the kitchen table. "Elder financial abuse, forgery, theft. The DA's office wants your statements." Margaret described the power of attorney signing, her sedation, Nicole's gentle insistence, the pressure of grief making everything blur. Vincent detailed the medications that disappeared, the appointments canceled, the systematic isolation disguised as care. Marcus provided his documentation, 247 photographs, time-stamped and geotagged. Cloud storage access, the paper trail showing Nicole's exploitation. Detective Ruiz took notes for 2 hours. When she left, she touched Margaret's shoulder gently. "You did everything right," she said. "You documented. You fought back. That's rare." After she left, the three of them sat in the living room as afternoon light stretched across worn hardwood floors. David's dog tags hung from a hook by the door, not hidden in Margaret's compulsive organizing, not displayed as shrine, just present. "Whatever happens tomorrow," Vincent said, his voice carrying over the refrigerator's hum, "we're family now." Marcus touched the dog tags at his throat. David's faith made metal, promise kept. "Yeah," he said, "we are." Judge Reeves reviewed the forensic audit in silence, broken only by pages turning. The courtroom felt smaller than it had 2 weeks ago, compressed by evidence too overwhelming to ignore. Nicole's attorney, Richard Chen, attempted damage control with professional desperation. "Your Honor, these are complex matters born from grief and misunderstanding. Mr. Chen." Judge Reeves removed her reading glasses. "I've reviewed $142,000 in unauthorized withdrawals, forged signatures on refinancing documents, and a notary who admitted accepting payment to backdate legal instruments. There's nothing complex about theft." She turned to Nicole directly. "Your power of attorney is terminated immediately. You will make full restitution of $142,000 plus legal fees. I'm referring this case to the district attorney for criminal prosecution." Nicole sat motionless, her performance finally abandoned. Just a woman who'd gambled on exploitation and lost. "You face charges of elder financial abuse under California Welfare and Institutions Code 156.110.30, forgery and grand theft," Judge Reeves continued. "The guardianship petition is dismissed entirely." She looked at Margaret and Vincent. "Mr. and Mrs. Chen, I find you fully competent to manage your own affairs. Grief and physical limitations are not incapacity. They're part of being human." Margaret felt Vincent's hand find hers. Deliberate connection instead of accidental touch. Judge Reeves turned her attention to Marcus. "Mr. Rivera, approach the bench." Marcus stood, legs unsteady, expecting judgment for his foster care history, his unemployment, his intrusion into their grief-shattered household. "You documented systematic abuse when trained professionals missed it," Judge Reeves said. "You protected 2 people when their own family exploited them. You showed remarkable character." She paused, glancing at the adoption petition Elena Santos had filed the previous week. "What are your intentions regarding the Chens?" Marcus's voice came out rough. "I want to stay, if they'll have me. I have nowhere else. But that's not why." He stopped, trying to find words. "David gave me their address. Said they were family. He was right." Margaret stood without prompting. "He's our son. David chose him. We choose him." Vincent nodded, hearing aids catching every word. "Family?" Judge Reeves smiled. First genuine emotion she'd shown through 2 weeks of testimony. "The petition for adoption is approved. Marcus Rivera, you are now Marcus Chen. Congratulations." The courtroom erupted in quiet celebration. Elena Santos embraced Marcus. Patricia Kim wiped her eyes from the gallery. Mrs. Gutierrez crossed herself, whispering prayers in Spanish. That evening, they returned to the Pasadena house together. Neighbors had organized a celebration. Rosa Gutierrez's tamales, casseroles from the church ladies, a cake reading "Welcome Home, Marcus" in shaky frosting letters. Vincent showed Marcus the finished loft bed. Oak joints fitted perfectly. Margaret guided Marcus's hands through dumpling folds, her arthritis making movement painful, but her determination stronger. At midnight, after neighbors departed and dishes were washed, the three of them sat at the kitchen table. Marcus Chen, 19 years old, finally had a last name that meant belonging. "David would be proud," Margaret said quietly. Marcus touched the dog tags. Yeah, he would. Outside, the Pasadena Craftsman stood solid against California night. Inside, a family, forged from loss, built from wreckage, bound by choice. Began the work of healing together. The Pasadena Craftsman sold in April for enough to erase Nicole's damage and start fresh. Margaret stood in the empty living room one final time. Afternoon light painting squares across hardwood floors where furniture had lived for decades. David's room echoed hollow. The garage smelled of sawdust and memory. "Ready?" Marcus asked from the doorway, car keys in hand. She nodded, turning away from ghosts. The Altadena ranch house waited 3 miles north, smaller, manageable, theirs by choice rather than inheritance. 3 bedrooms, a workshop garage, a kitchen with counter space designed for dumpling making. Vincent had already claimed the garage, organizing tools with mechanical precision. Margaret's arthritis medication sat properly dispensed in the bathroom cabinet. Marcus's loft bedroom overlooked the backyard, a space that was his without qualification, without the weight of replacing someone dead. 6 months after Judge Reeves approved the adoption, their lives had found rhythm. Marcus worked full-time at Veterans Forward, a nonprofit helping foster youth navigate systems that had nearly destroyed him. He came home with stories, kids who needed David's kind of mentorship, programs that actually worked, small victories against bureaucratic indifference. He took night classes at Pasadena City College, studying social work with the intensity of someone who'd lived the textbook examples. Vincent's new hearing aids, properly fitted, properly functioning, changed everything. He volunteered at the community woodworking shop where Marcus had once taken classes, teaching teenagers the language of tools and patience. His hands remembered what grief had made him forget. Purpose lived in passing skills forward. Margaret joined a support group for bereaved parents at Rosa Gutierrez's church. She spoke David's name aloud without breaking, shared memories without drowning. Her arthritis remained painful, but managed. Proper medication, regular appointments, the difference between disability and incapacity. Nicole's criminal trial proceeded slowly through Los Angeles County Superior Court. Restitution arrived in court-ordered installments. $2,647 monthly, automatically deposited, a reminder of betrayal becoming repair. The Chens didn't hate her. They were too tired for that. But they'd established firm boundaries. No contact, no reconciliation. Just the steady payment of debts. On a Saturday morning in October, Marcus descended from his loft to find Margaret and Vincent already awake, laughing about Vincent's terrible pancake technique. Somehow, always burned on one side, raw on the other. "You're supposed to flip them before they smoke," Margaret teased, her Irish accent emerging slightly after 6 months of actual conversation rather than parallel silence. Vincent adjusted his hearing aids with exaggerated drama. "What? Can't hear criticism?" Marcus grinned, accepting the spatula Margaret thrust toward him. "My turn. To fail?" "Your turn to learn," she corrected. David's dog tags hung on a hook by the kitchen door, not hidden in drawers, not displayed as shrine, just present. A reminder that loss and continuation could coexist. Marcus flipped pancakes while Vincent made coffee and Margaret set the table. Ordinary movements, daily rituals, the quiet architecture of family. They were keeping receipts of a different kind now. Margaret's dumpling recipe transcribed in Marcus's careful handwriting. Vincent's woodworking designs sketched on graph paper. Photographs of the three of them at community events. Evidence that family was what you built when everything else was taken away. "These are actually worse than Dad's," Marcus announced, surveying his burnt offerings. Vincent laughed, full sound, unguarded. "That's my boy." Margaret handed Marcus the syrup, her arthritic fingers steady against his palm. "Perfect," she said. "Absolutely perfect." The kitchen filled with smoke and laughter and the quiet sound of healing. Outside, Altadena morning stretched golden across their chosen home. Inside, 3 people who'd found each other in wreckage sat down to breakfast together. Not replacement, not forgetting. Continuation.